Meanwhile, on the comic box. Ba-dow-bop-a-doo-bow-doo.
Skiddly-bop, skiddly-bop-boo.
Bop-bop-dibbity-bop-doo-way. Comics.
That was very hip-hop.
No, it was good. I liked it. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. My name's Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek, and I am joined once again by Sir Liam O'Rourke. You're a sir this time. I don't know why.
I don't mind being a sir.
And we are also joined for the very first time by our other college friend, Dr. Ray. Dr. Raymond Q. Widstrand. The Q stands for Phineas. Hi, yes. Dr. Ray.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. So this is our Doctor Strange review episode, so we are going to dive in just a second. But first, since Ray is new to the show, I thought we would get to know him just a little bit, and so I figure, with it being a comic book podcast,
to know you, getting to like you.
I figured the best way to do that is just to ask him what are you currently reading as far as comic books. You are one of my few friends that actually reads comics on a monthly basis and reads new comics. So what are you reading right now?
Well, the obvious big one that I buy pretty much every time a new issue comes out is Saga by Brian K. Vaughan, with art by Fiona Staples. Yeah, that's my big one that I have to buy for myself. Other than that, since I was hospitalized a few years ago and now out of the hospital, my sister's husband's parents buy me comics. And
Nice.
They buy me Detective Comics, Batman, Suicide Squad, Ant-Man. Basically, if there's been a movie about it, they buy that for me.
So is that in trades, or are they buying you loose comics?
Buying me the individual issues as they come out.
Nice. Okay.
So.
And so now I know Saga, but now you're also you're both. This could be its own episode at some point. You're both big Star Wars guys.
Oh, yeah.
You're wearing a Star Wars t-shirt right now, Liam,
Yep.
with his TIE fighters on
I
there.
had to show my geek pride when going to represent geek culture in a geeky, universe like the Doctor Strange audience.
That's fair. But you also read, is it Darth Vader, or which of the Star Wars books are you currently reading?
I'm reading Darth Vader. He's always been a favorite character of mine,
Mhm.
so I like the premise. It's set in between A New Hope and Empire.
Okay.
So it's actually slowly dealing with Vader's quest to find out who the Force-sensitive pilot who blew up the Death Star is,
Oh.
and slowly come to the realization that it's his son,
Right.
Luke Skywalker.
Wait. Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father?
Oh, spoilers, sorry.
Oh, man. Oh. And you know,
I was on episode 3,
you're
okay?
still working your way through.
He's going sequentially.
So does the first issue start where his TIE fighter is still spinning around and he's just throwing up in his helmet?
That would be great, and I hope they
He's got a system to
retroactively
deal with
include
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
He
filters.
A knob, and then, all that stuff just gets cycled
Just
right through.
straight through. He just
Yep.
spills out his boot on the side.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. Thank you. That is Dr. Ray. Speaking of spoilers, though, while we're saying, I suppose we should preface, we just got out of the theater and then had sandwiches. So we'll say 20 minutes ago or so, we left the theater.
Just finished the movie. Just reached the climax.
Yes.
Haven't even had time to have a cigarette or shower.
No processing of any
still
information or cleansing of
Post-coital. Yeah.
and we've been fighting the urge to discuss it amongst ourselves.
We have.
So.
But fair warning, this is spoiler territory from here on out. So I hope, for those that haven't seen it and don't want it spoiled, I hope you've enjoyed the podcast this far. It's time to turn us off.
Mm-hmm. And it's gonna be fresh. It's gonna be raw, unfiltered.
We have not
information.
spoken. We looked at each other when the movie ended. We got up and we walked out.
We had opinions. We had jokes. We had general thoughts,
but nothing.
None of it.
Nothing has been said.
No.
So this is
all
the
gonna
freshest.
Be off the cuff.
I will admit a couple of rib nudges to Ray during the movie.
Liam gave me a knowing glance that spoke volumes.
As many volumes as the Book of the Vishanti.
Mm.
Yeah, sorry. All right.
Too soon.
So let's start with, I'm thinking just a general thought of, did you like it, did you not, to preface going in, and then I figure we do story, then we'll talk about characters that we really liked, and then just sort of our final thoughts there's been so many Marvel movies and the TV shows and stuff that I don't want to try and fit it in quite yet. I don't think we've had time to figure out exactly where it ranks, but a general idea on the spectrum of Marvel movies from, you know...
I have a general idea
Yeah.
where it fits into my favorites. But,
Okay.
You know,
Perfect.
Yeah, not a iron concrete set in stone sort of
Yeah,
thing.
and I consider there's a podcast I listen to called We Can Do This All Day, which does an episode on every piece of Marvel storytelling in the MCU. So every movie gets an episode, and then every episode of Agent Carter will get its own. Right now, they're working through the first couple episodes of S.H.I.E.L.D. before Winter Soldier. And they grade everything on the Iron Standard, where everything, Iron Man, the first Iron Man being the first MCU thing, is a 3 out of 5. So everything is either better or worse than Iron Man. And I like that, but I'm not going to steal it because we are not affiliated with that podcast. As much as I enjoyed it. If you're a Marvel fan, go listen. Anyway, so general thoughts. Kind of a basic, did you like it? Did you not like it? Dr. Ray.
I enjoyed it. I would recommend this movie. I would give it a thumbs up.
Okay.
Is it my favorite Marvel movie? Well, I suppose we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But overall impressions, it's visually quite impressive.
Yes.
And the story is kind of your basic origin story, but it's told really well. And we'll, again, get into more depth later, but it's very brisk with dealing with the origin aspect of the origin story, and really delves into some themes of the character and villains and allies that, again, I was appreciative as a fan who's familiar with the cliff notes on the character.
Okay. So have you, I suppose that was a thing we didn't even discuss. Have you read Doctor Strange stuff in the past?
Well, I grew up reading a lot of Marvel comics, like Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four, and some Avengers even, but not a lot of Doctor Strange. I was familiar with kind of the character. I've seen him in team-ups with other characters and teams.
Right, yeah.
So I knew his role in the Marvel U. He's part of the Illuminati.
Yep.
Kind of their magician, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was familiar with a lot of the items and the Ancient One.
Right.
And a lot of more Modo.
So like the name-checking stuff clicked with you as a general fan?
Yeah, a lot of it did. The Eye of Agamotto.
Yep. Liam, so now you have passing history with Doctor Strange. Have you ever actually read any Doctor Strange books?
Not centralized on him. Like Ray, I grew up reading a lot of other
He's in the
Marvel
periphery.
Stuff. Yeah, and anytime they need somebody real powerful and knowledgeable, they tend to gravitate towards him. If Reed Richards is stumped, so he's kind of always in the mix, no matter what is the general issue.
So with that familiarity, what did you think overall?
I liked the movie. It's not my favorite. I'd say somewhere in the 2.5 to 3 star range for me. But yeah, I liked it, and it was more of a good time visually for me than it was like the story was amazing.
Okay, and I'm going to mostly agree. I'll slowly move that mic a little closer to you. I think I'm kind of with you. I agree with Ray. It is good. Clearly, I think this is one of, if not the most visually striking movies we've gotten from the MCU. But I thought it was maybe just okay in the end. And I think it's because we've been spoiled with special effects to this point with our movies in general. Yeah. Like, they're not special anymore. They're like, oh, wow, it's really impressive. But you just take for granted that what you're going to see is going to, like, they're going to be able to pull off whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
So it comes down to, is the thing they're doing interesting or unique? And it was. It was just, I think there was certainly some story things that were in there that didn't need to be in there.
Yeah.
I overall, I felt like it was a very stuffed movie. Like, they were trying to almost play catch up.
I kind of agree with that, too, because they didn't spend a lot of time working up the origin to him becoming, like attuned to some amount of the mysticism.
Right.
But then as soon as he does, he hits the ground running, and he's like, not immediately a prodigy, but it's like he has one little hang up, and then he's always good at reading books.
He has a line where he says how he's going to become good at magic, so to speak. How he's going to become a sorcerer is apply the same thing he did to becoming a great doctor, which is study and practice, and that goes by in like one brief montage.
Yeah.
It's like he's starting and he's great.
And
Yeah.
He's the best.
They showed the study, but they didn't show the practice.
There wasn't even a great montage. That would have been amazing if there
I
was
was
some
like,
80s style
here
fixing it
comes-
up montage in the middle.
I was like, here comes the magician, apprentice montage. Here we go. Let's get a little music. Let's
he's the
show
best around.
Yeah, let's show him like doing some magic in the snow with a truck behind him. Like pulling it with magic. Or like busting the ribs of some sides of beef. In a
so at
meat
the end
locker with magic.
in the scene when he's on Everest and he's left up there, is he doesn't make a portal back. He just climbs to the top and goes, Dormammu!
Yeah, if he just jumped around and started like raising his fists in the air, then I would have been like, all right.
And that I think might be the issue with it. There are amazing set pieces in this film. There are amazing scenes in this film when taken separately. I feel like put together, the puzzle pieces don't quite fit.
Yeah.
Like there's amazing scenes because there's some training scenes, or I love the shot where it shows his body sleeping so he's getting rest and his astral form is still reading the book.
Yeah,
I love
cool.
that.
That was
like,
really cool.
So there's it's like it has everything you would want in a Doctor Strange movie. It just didn't seem to gel.
Yeah.
And
some of it, I think, is the pacing. Like they didn't let it linger in something.
They really wanted
Sometimes
to get
they
through, and it
wanted
was
to
already
show you something, but they didn't want you to see it for too long.
And that was one of my main thoughts. This is a 2-hour movie. It was like 127 minutes or something like that. I kind of feel like I need a 3-hour version of Doctor Strange because of the story that they're telling. If it was a different story, yes, but there is so much happening, and like I can't even remember the name of the bad guy. All I know is he's the yellow one, which, by the way, or the orange one.
Concilius, which is not a character I recognize from the comic. I just enjoyed that character because it was Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is another point I'll throw out there right now. The actors do a great job.
Yeah.
They're killing it.
And I might disagree, and I'm waiting for your reaction on this one, to Benny Batch. Benedict Cumberbatch. I think it's just him with an American accent is weird to me. I have a really hard time hearing that accent come out of his face because we're so used to the British stuff. But it's just, I don't know that it's his fault either because he looks great. Like one of my favorite things by far. I love the costume design in here because it's pretty. You can tell there's amazing costume work, embroidery work on all of the different costume pieces. The one thing I want after walking out of that movie is a sweet Doctor Strange costume.
Yeah.
Though Ray'd probably pull it off better than me. He's rocking the sweet goatee right now too.
I got the facial hair for it.
But like it was just. And well, it was the other thing that I thought was interesting, and I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but clearly from a toy point of view, and I don't know if this was a Marvel executive note, that they're like, okay, you're all magicians, because we're talking executive now, right? So you're all magic guys, that's fine. Nobody's going to tell you apart, you're dressing to alike. Tell you what, color code everybody.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange is blue, Mordo is green, the Ancient One is yellow.
I'm really surprised that they didn't go the Guardians of the Galaxy route / the Green Lantern, which we were just talking about before we started recording route.
Yeah.
Which is have like non-human characters as magicians. I'm actually, now that you bring that up, very surprised they didn't go
because that's how you can tell the difference.
Here's a squirrel wizard. Here's a dolphin wizard. Aren't they entertaining?
I'd love a dolphin wizard.
That might happen eventually. You never know.
Well,
you never know. I don't know.
I'm going to patent that idea after we stop recording, so Marvel can't take that
if they want to do the dolphin wizards.
Yeah, if they want the kitten wizard in the next one.
Well,
great idea.
Pay
Sell
Dr.
a lot
Ray.
of toys.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. But no, I thought the color coding was clever. But here's the thing with that number, even though they color coded everybody to split them up, very few characters in this story.
Yeah.
The henchmen, in my mind, do not count. They don't have names.
No.
They might as well not have faces.
No.
They're just generic
they don't get
white
any
bad guys.
Screen time on just them.
No.
They're always in the background or they're in the middle of the fight.
Yes, exactly. So you have...
Even when they get banished to the other parts of the world or whatever through the doorways.
Yeah.
It's just like the one chick that's like, I'm mad kind of moment.
She's stuck in the desert.
And then done.
And
done.
then
Forgot.
Which, by the way, is that why we're supposed to assume they went? Because in the end, when they show, what's the bad guy's name again?
Concilius.
Coriander.
Concilius.
Yeah.
So when
Khaleesi.
Khaleesi conciliation.
Chrysalis.
Colander?
So when C-Money shows up at the end through the portal, he has like the desert behind him, and I'm like, so is that his hidden base of operations? But now that you said that the woman was thrown into the desert, maybe they just went to pick her up.
Yeah, but
That makes more sense.
he knew where she was.
Well, he can make portals wherever, and yeah, I assume he would have seen it. He wasn't doing anything.
Yeah,
at the
but again,
time.
it's just
He
was just watching
recognized
the
that
fight.
part of the
Yeah.
Serengeti.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Like,
the Gobi Desert.
Yeah,
Clearly,
it's the
I'm
Sahara.
there every other weekend for
Yeah.
raids.
Yeah.
like,
But
I recognize that stone.
yeah,
But there were very few characters, which I feel was a smart move.
yeah.
I almost would have wanted fewer sets, if you will, then fewer locations. I'm okay with them traveling around the world via the portals for the stuff. And in the end, I guess there weren't that many locations either.
They had a Nepal crew. Like, I
Yeah.
think you
Well,
probably
they
could have
filmed
done
that
some
scene
of that without
instead of a
actually
backlot.
going to Nepal.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think maybe a little British Columbia for the mountains. You know, it would have been doable without having to go to Nepal. But okay. Whatever.
Well, then how about this as
They
far
have to pad
as
the
saving
budget.
money? And we can get into it more with the character, but I feel that the character of Christine Palmer, who, by the way, because I know neither of you actually listen to my podcast, first appearance in the comics, Night Nurse #1. She is actually one of the night nurses
Nice.
in Marvel Comics.
Okay.
So again, happy they made her a doctor in this one. But as far as I'm aware, she has next to no connection with Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange's only love interest, as far as I'm aware, is Clea. But in any case, I found her character mostly useless.
Yeah.
I didn't need a love story. I
No.
didn't want a love story. Give me a lost love because he's a jerk, so she walks out on him, which she does. Stop it there. He can magic her a flower later on in the movie to say, thank you, it pushed me in the right direction, and she sees him as Sorcerer Supreme or whatever, which also, interestingly, he is not
That's
at
true.
the end of this. They
I was
say
gonna
there is
say-
no Sorcerer Supreme, which means that Marvel doesn't quite go perfectly linear, because in one of the other movies, they talk about how the people they're keeping tabs on, and one of them is Stephen Strange. So I don't know how we're supposed to reconcile the timelines, where this one starts, because they mention the man in the experimental suit with like the broken back. That's got to be Rhodey,
Yeah.
right? From Civil War. So why do they have their eye on Doctor Strange if he hasn't been doing anything mystical yet? Blah blah blah. In any case, I'm getting away from my own point here. It was the idea that we didn't need that love interest. I swear I had another point in there somewhere, and I don't remember what. Oh, the fact that there's no Sorcerer Supreme means hopefully he'll have several more years. As these movies come out a few years ahead of each other, they kind of try and keep it modern time. So that type of, between Avengers 1 and Avengers 2, that time was meant to have actually passed, and for them to have been working as a team for that amount of time. So by the time we see them again, they're very gelled.
Yeah.
So hopefully that means we'll get several more years, because we don't know how much time took place
and
between him
honestly-
being. They just said you've been gone so long. They kept it intentionally vague.
And honestly, within the movie, he did not get to the point where he should be the
Oh, no.
Sorcerer Supreme
No,
at the end
because
of the movie.
the only thing
He's
he
still
can
clearly
still
an
do
apprentice.
is make the whip is like the only weapon he can make,
Yeah.
and then shields.
He's
But
got some natural talent, and he, like, with the eidetic memory, he
Right.
can remember everything that he's read already. So even things that are beyond his comprehension, he still has
you
some
still have to
understanding.
practice, because he said
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was
so,
learning and
like, when he's
practice.
able to do the whole time loop thing. You know,
Yeah.
clearly that's magic beyond his natural ability, but he knows how to do it because he read about it. You know?
Right.
So, obviously, he's good, but for them to be like, well, now you're the,
Yeah.
like,
And they make a note. They say, like, oh, you were able to use it. That's not a normal wizard.
Yeah.
You have an aptitude. Clearly, you were meant to do magic.
I
kind of
did
thing.
think, though, spoiler alert, Tilda Swinton, when she died, I thought she was going to do some, like, magic chakra thumb thing where she jams her thumb to his forehead
And give him the rest of her
imparts
powers.
him all this knowledge.
Which
or
has
something.
happened in the comics. I did an episode last week, which was just a prep. So we talked a little bit about the Ancient One and about all the different characters that were going to kind of show up. How about Mordo was originally Transylvanian in the comic books. And that's the Ancient One's died several times. And each time he, because it's in the comics, it's a guy, just pulls an Obi-Wan Kenobi and sticks around in ghost form. But in one of the times, that is, I think, maybe when he becomes a Sorcerer Supreme, or there's something like that where he does impart power to him. But now here's this one. Do any of us care that the Ancient One was female? I had
No.
absolutely no problem
Oh
with it.
no.
Or that Mordo was black.
No.
had
I
no
actually
problem
had
with
more
that.
of a they cast Tilda Swinton to be this like ancient, but then they made some mention to her of being Celtic.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so it would make
That's kinda
sense
neat,
that she
yeah.
actually is a white character, knowing all this mysticism stuff.
Stuck
it's not like
in
a
Kathmandu,
Hollywood
yeah.
whitewashing
Yeah.
where it should have been, I don't know, Lucy Liu in a bald cap or something.
I will say that I like seeing Tilda Swinton in general.
Yeah,
So-
she's great.
And I will say, as far as racial aspects of casting, I'm just glad they kept Wong Asian.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And
If there
Yeah.
was anything that they
and
were
it
going
was
to
a
stick
real
with.
Asian man. It wasn't like somebody who's Asian appearance
know,
but has
I
a
know.
very
yeah, I know Jonah Hill wanted the part, but I'm
Yeah.
glad they went.
Which was the thing with me, is I was sitting there and having my issues, and again, I know this is just personal fan whatever of Benny Batch speaking with an American accent. I was like, why couldn't he just be British? Like,
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
couldn't he just be a Brit living in New York
Yeah.
as an American citizen?
And again, I don't know enough
And-
about Doctor Strange's origins to
Yeah.
say like, no, he has to be an American because
Born-
of this and this
No,
and this.
in the comics, born in Philly, grew up in like Nebraska, doesn't really matter. His
I thought
origin
for
story
sure
doesn't
born
start
in
until he's a
Philly.
doctor.
Given the fact
He's
that he's
gonna
like,
break into a Will Smith song.
yeah,
so.
I figured he's in this wealthy elite, probably wasn't like a poor person growing up, so he probably has been in an affluent kind of family.
Yeah.
It would make sense if he would have been like schooled in London, or like studied abroad or something like that.
But I
you
like
know?
that we don't care. And I
Yeah.
like that they didn't spend time on that.
Yeah, they
His
didn't spend
story
too much
starts
time on
he's
Doctor
a jerk doctor,
Strange.
which I think is fine. I almost felt we could have done with less, because that whole opening scene of him doing brain surgery, like, just comes down to we need to see that he's good at what he does and he's a jerk.
And that his hands mean a lot to him.
Right.
Hmm.
Which is why they have like a piano in his apartment and stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was like, what kind of car crushes your hands before
Well, you
everything
saw his
else?
hands went into the dash, so obviously it was
He
just
fell hands first.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the comic was written by Stan Lee. So he's just like, all right, here's our origin. He's a surgeon. He loses his hands. So what does he do instead? He becomes a doctor of magic.
By the way, that was by a long shot the worst Stan Lee cameo of all of them.
And that he's just on a bus reading about dimensional. He was reading about something like
Yeah.
chakras or something.
couldn't even-
I want to get it on DVD just so I can pause
Yeah.
that scene and see what he's reading.
I didn't even focus on what he was reading. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there's Stan Lee, and he's like, that's hilarious.
He's reading a
And I'm
book
like,
about like dimensions or chakras or it was
I was like, that's the
yeah.
worst. Just don't give us those. I thought it was funny when he was like, the guy, the DJ at the strip club or whatever, and
Yeah.
the one
Yeah.
I liked him being the old man who drinks the Hulk blood tainted soda. Like where he's
Right.
just some guy out there in the world. It's not like
or even in Luke Cage, his cameo is not in person. There's just a poster on the wall that says like see something, say something, call the cops, and it's just Stan Lee as a cop. It's just the cop on the poster just happens to be Stan Lee.
Thank you for bringing up that show, because I'd like to go back to an earlier point, which is that where Stephen Strange is from doesn't really matter to that character. There are comic book characters where their hometown does matter.
yes,
Like Luke Cage being from Harlem is important to that character.
Right.
Daredevil
yeah,
being Hell's Kitchen is very important to that character.
Yep.
Queens, the fact that Spider-Man Peter Parker is from Queens is actually kind of important to
Yeah.
that
And Cap
character
from
too.
Brooklyn.
But if
Yeah.
like you told me Iron Man was from New Jersey, I'd be
Yeah.
like, okay, sure,
Yeah.
He's
It-
another one who could be a Brit.
yeah,
For all
Yeah.
I care.
Yeah.
They're the people that just have a broader scope because those are those heroes that just focus on that area.
Yeah.
So let me ask this. As somebody who has had brain surgery performed on them in the past, Ray, would you trust Dr. Strange to do your surgery?
Well, he's such a great doctor. And of course, when you want a neurosurgeon, you want the hotshot,
You do.
play by no rules, Tony Stark, probably a heavy drinker.
Yeah.
You want that guy.
You can't
Yeah.
do
Messing
that
around
by
in your head.
hand. We don't have time.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sunglasses on.
Yeah.
Crank up the music.
yeah. And
Hey, we
my
have a
mom is
machine to do this. Now I want to do it myself.
my mom's an ER nurse, and has worked in the with neurosurgeons for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely their attitude. That they are the hottest, most alpha guy on the planet, that they are just the, so I was like, I'm glad that was how they represented him as a doctor, but again, I'm glad that they pushed past that a little bit.
Very much a Tony Stark type.
Yeah.
Like, hot shot.
Yeah.
Breaking all the rules, doing things his way.
Oh, yeah.
Because you don't play by the rule book when it comes to brain surgery.
Oh,
Any
no.
kind of surgery, really.
That's right. You just surf those waves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but general story thing, because we're kind of floating into character stuff. General story, things you really like, things that you didn't like.
Like you, I didn't really care for the love story.
Yeah.
I think that could have been axed quite easily. In fact, that was a point of confusion to me. Was it Christine was her name?
Christine Palmer,
And
yeah.
she gave him a watch while they were together, and I got the impression early in the film that they'd broken up.
Yeah, they were.
So why would he still have that gift watch he got from his girlfriend? Maybe it was a good watch. It just never ran out of batteries, kept time well. I would understand that. But then why would it have so much emotional significance for him, considering it's from his ex-girlfriend?
And they talked about how he doesn't
want to give it up to the people who are trying to rob him. They just want his watch, not his money. He's like, that's the one thing I can't part with.
Yeah.
You parted with the woman. If she really meant that much to you, you probably should have worked a little teensy bit harder to keep that relationship
And it showed him
alive.
have this massive watch collection earlier, before
where
his accident.
they all spin in the drawer, by the way.
Which I was like, what?
Just
Okay.
got power run into it, so they all spin and look fancy.
So, but then, he gets into the accident and he starts, I guess, spending all his money trying to get, new surgeries for his hands to get them to work again. So I guess the idea is that he sold all his other watches.
Yes.
And this is the watch that he kept, but it's like, you didn't really do a very good job of spelling that out for us, or giving us
the idea that it's her criticism that is making him partially a better person at this point,
or that he does
they
still
don't
have some
give us that.
feelings for her.
And it's like, you can't.
He
do
asks her to go
both.
to the, hey, there's a dinner that I'm speaking at tonight. You want to go? And she's like, no, I didn't like those when we were together. Why would I want to go now?
Yeah.
And he wasn't like, well, maybe we could do afterward. No, he didn't do that. He was just like, oh, okay, whatever. So it doesn't get a sense that he still pines for her.
To be fair, she was the one that was right there when he woke up after his accident.
That's true.
So I suppose there's that, but it's exactly that point, is that we don't get really deep into that relationship. So why do you have it there? Because
you don't give us enough to really care.
He could have shown up out of the blue, dressed the way he was when he was injured, going to her for help, and it would have been totally fine without the love story aspect to it. It's just, I know somewhere else to go, which I don't know why. Don't go back to the super magic people that can magically.
Yeah.
But the idea is, who does he think of first?
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be.
And a better
what we get
version
out
of that is in the Daredevil show with
Yeah.
Rosario Dawson.
The other night nurse.
The other night nurse. Yeah. So that makes more sense.
So now. Also, story things that didn't necessarily need to be there. And I want to know what you guys think of this. The climax of the film itself. Did we need the scene with Dormammu? It's, again, in itself, entertaining. I'm coming up with a clever way to defeat this all-powerful thing, but did that actually need to be a part of that movie?
Well, it was the time gem, so...
Right.
Yeah, they needed to show a bit of what it's capable of. I have a quick question I'd like to interject with.
Ray is raising his hand.
Dormammu, yes. A little bit of peek behind the curtain there. I am raising my hand. Dormammu, in the comics, isn't he a gigantic dragon of some kind?
No, he is not.
All right.
Dormammu has always been a giant
Fing
dude.
Fang Foom?
You might be thinking of Fing Fang Foom is a giant dragon.
Yeah.
And then there's actually a dragon called Dragon Man who's purple and wears little underwear.
Okay, yeah. Dragon.
No, so Dormammu, sometimes he's shown with multiple arms, I think. But he's a dude who wears all purple and his head is on fire, kind of like the Human Torch. And they did play that right where he is this giant master of the dark dimension who's always trying to take over our dimension.
Oh yeah,
and
I remember seeing him before.
Yeah, and he is one of Doctor Strange's main villains.
Yeah, I recognize the name.
Which was why it was kind of odd that it turned into I'm clever and this is the way I'm going to beat you. I was like, this isn't the plot of this movie though, is it? I thought the plot of the movie was we're learning magic because there's another, sorcerer who went rogue who's trying to let these dark things into our dimension. My movie would have not had maybe a glimpse of Dormammu at the end because you think you win, but you don't. There's still a crack because he's just learning and Doctor Strange isn't perfect yet, so he doesn't seal up the portal. So at the very end, you get just that hint of, the portal is...
Kind of what they do with Thanos. Kind of just a glimpse of him
Yeah.
to set it up for the future.
Like, if this is your bad guy, make him your bad guy. And I will say, this is a problem that all Marvel movies have had really up to this point, with maybe the slight exception of Ultron. Their villains are terrible. They're completely underdeveloped. They're just another version of our hero.
And I would honestly say that Ultron is not a particularly great villain either.
No, but it's fair that we don't actually really know what his goal is, but they give him more charisma.
Hugo Weaving as the Red Skull, to me, is still in my mind the best of the Marvel villains in the MCU.
Well, at least his goal is clear: get his hands on the Tesseract.
I would go Loki for my...
Yeah, that's fair. Loki is
Tom
by far the
Hiddleston.
most developed character. His goals are clear. We get some backstory to him as well. We get character development, sort of, with him. And then it always reneges on it. Every time you get character development, you go, nope, just kidding, which is really frustrating.
You know who is actually the best Marvel villain?
Who?
Magneto.
Well, yeah, but we're talking the MCU.
Yeah.
Which...
I'm just saying, like,
Obviously, Magneto has
They
been...
know how to do
yeah.
it. They've done it well. It's just a
Well,
shame that
he's
it's
always
not
one of the, like,
overwhelming universe where it's... the X-Men are a part of this.
But he's always one of the top 3 villains in Marvel Comics anyways, like Magneto and Doctor Doom, and characters who have clearly defined...
They butchered Doctor Doom, too.
I know.
Oh, man.
Well, I have a question. Which actor's portrayal of Magneto do you like most?
Oof. See,
Ian Holm or Michael Fassbender?
Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen.
Yeah, Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen, sorry.
Has been so great, but
He has the gravitas.
plays,
and Fassbender has the rest of the emotional spectrum, I think.
Yes, he plays such a good young version of Magneto.
The scene where he gets the happy memory of his folks and he's crying is just like that's everything you need to know about Magneto.
Yeah,
is they're like, you need to take your happy memories, which tells you what you're fighting for, and your rage, and you have your character.
One of my favorite scenes from any comic book movie is not from one of my comic book favorite movies. It's from the X-Men early class.
First class. That's actually might be my favorite X-Men movie.
When he goes to the bar hunting the Nazis. Like,
with the coin thing?
Yeah. That was such a great scene. It's an actor doing a real good job in that scene. It's a character development thing, but it's totally off the point. But that is a well done, well developed, clearly developed character.
So if that's a good villain, what did Conciliation in this movie, whatever his name is, C-Money, what did he need in this movie? Because his plan was to let the dark dimension enter ours so that everyone lives forever in a hell dimension.
He to him, it seems like he wanted to save the world by devoting it to this dark universe.
Right.
But
it doesn't...
that doesn't make you feel like a bad guy.
It's like a dude that's hanging out over drinks. Be like, it'd be great if we were just in the dark dimension. We'd all live forever. And you'd be like, yeah, but it'd be like hell, wouldn't it? It'd be like, oh yeah, whatever. Let's get another drink, and that would be the end of it.
Yeah,
like
now,
there's no. It's like nobody ever asked him.
Life to this.
And who are his acolytes? Where did they come? We assumed they were also students of the Ancient One, which also was like this little apartment, but then turns into like a big training ground of people doing magic in the middle of the city.
And where did those people all go?
I don't know.
We
don't get... I have a feeling we got a couple names of the other masters.
Yeah.
I have a feeling like those were Easter eggs. And because I was assuming I would come here with a ton of Easter eggs. And the only ones that I have that I didn't mention in my podcast is the Eye of Agamotto, though in this one they claim that Agamotto was the original Sorcerer Supreme, when in the comics he is one of the 3 principalities known as the Vishanti, which are the extra-dimensional beings where they get their powers. It's Agamotto, it's Hoggoth, like the Hoary Hosts of Hoggoth, which was not in this movie. I wanted to hear him say the Hoary Hosts of Hoggoth. And then another one whose name I can never remember that starts with like an O. So, but there was the Eye of Agamotto. We never saw the Orb of Agamotto. They did say the Wand of Watum, which is what Wong was holding at the end. They don't say that, but that is what it looks like in the comics. And the other big one is the staff that Mordo has. He calls the staff of the Living Tribunal, which is a huge Easter egg for Marvel fans. If you guys remember, he's the giant gold guy that sits in the chair with the purple veil over like his other heads. And he is basically, in the Marvel Universe, the representative of God in the universe. He is above even Eternity, who is the living embodiment of the Marvel Universe. The Living Tribunal stands even above him. He basically is kind of their version of the Spectre, but he'll come in and judge everybody and decides whether this giant cosmic thing, they're like, Thanos has the Infinity Gauntlet. He's taking over the universe. You need to step in. And he'll be like, I've weighed all the things and he's not doing anything unnatural. This is actually okay because the universe has to go its own path or whatever. And I think in the end, Thanos even beats the Living Tribunal. But in any case, that's it. You know, the Cloak of Levitation obviously is totally Aladdin's magic carpet in this movie.
It was the comic relief in this movie.
Yeah. It's
kind of works.
I'm just happy it wasn't Wong as the comedic sidekick, though.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the cloak, and as I said in my primer, the cloak is not autonomous. It does not have its own personality in the books, as far as I'm aware. Everything I've read is it's his cape and does what he tells it to.
Yeah.
So I was kind of expecting that in this, though.
It's kind of like Spawn's cape.
Yeah.
Where it's like a living entity with its own will.
Has sentience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can like change shape, sort of, or at least, control its own physical self.
I kind of wondered why it chose Doctor Strange.
Yeah, they're just like, it shows you. Why? Nothing. Shut up.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
Let's
need
continue.
him
And
to
they're
beat
like-
up bad guys.
When do I get a relic? When one chooses you. And then
Yeah.
it's like, oh.
So
Can we
the Cloak of
understand
Levitation
why?
shows him. It was a throwaway line to explain later
Can we
on.
understand why maybe a relic decides to choose someone? Can we, like...
The wand chooses the wizard.
The
Liam.
sorting hat did a better job of it. Like...
The wand
Well-
chooses the wizard. We didn't get an explanation for that. So
That is
I guess that's
because
take that.
magic.
Because magic. Because magic. Because he was color coded the right color.
I guess.
So it matched his outfit.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about humor then for a second in this story.
Maybe
I
it's
felt
just a
like
cut.
most of it fell flat. They couldn't make Doctor Strange another Tony Stark.
No.
They
Right.
did.
They tried. No, it was like a halfway point.
I'm
And
not
I just-
saying he's as good as Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man. I'm
No,
just saying
certainly not.
it was written almost exactly like it's Tony Stark, Dr. Tony Stark.
Kind of. I felt like they didn't go that far. He wasn't that snarky. He was fairly snarky, but I didn't feel like he was that far. And again, it's that idea that I think he looks the part amazingly. When you see him, you're like perfect casting. But in the actual portrayal, the only time I felt like his humor actually hit home properly is just that very slight humor where he's his body is there and Rachel McAdams' character, Dr. Palmer, is trying to help him and stitch his wounds or whatever. And he just says, keep me alive, won't you? And then he disappears. That line, I was like, give me that type of humor. Just that little slight, just to calm other people down because clearly this is something that you think is insane. So I'm just going to use a little humor. But the rest of the like Tony Starkish snarky didn't work for me. I would like to see a more earnest Doctor Strange who doesn't mind making a little joke now and again. Like I thought him constantly calling Wong different names was bad. I didn't need him because the initial one name, like, Beyonce and Eminem and Bono. Like, I guess.
It wasn't funny, and then it wasn't funny, and then it wasn't funny, and then it wasn't fun. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't a
like you get
repetitive-
Wong listening to Beyonce, which I guess.
Yeah.
Which was funny to me.
That
but-
was worth a chuckle. But again, it was like, wait, did he give him his iPod so that he could listen to Beyonce,
Yeah.
so that he would then get the reference? Or does this guy actually have this of his own, and he does listen to Beyonce, and he does know who she is? He just didn't want to acknowledge it to him that he does.
Right. I just feel like as far as humor goes, if you wanted to introduce the cape earlier, say, all right, it's time for you to choose your artifact, or the wand's going to choose the
Or
wizard.
a room full of artifacts.
Right.
that,
And right. And so as he's looking through them,
These are all
we
the
get
artifacts.
but
Yeah.
it's like we get like their armory, and
Or
we get
like in Harry Potter, where you have the wand scene, where he
Right.
here, try this one. Here, try this one. Here,
it would give us a ton of cool Easter eggs with a lot of the different mystical
like here,
items
lift that
and stuff.
hammer. And it's like, there you go. And maybe it's not Thor's hammer. Maybe it's Beta Ray Bill's hammer.
Yeah.
Stormbreaker.
Yeah.
Deep
So
cuts.
some nerds out there would be like, hey, that's like Mjolnir, but that's not Mjolnir.
That's something else. So, and then you could have introduced it early, and you would have had your comic relief for the rest of the film. Just there, where it would just screw with... Because we got some funny scenes in the middle of very big battles where he's, like,
and
running
he's, like,
in place.
And it wipes his tears off his face.
Yeah, and it's like... I don't know. It's tough, because I kind of wanted the whole thing. If you're going to do an origin story, give me an origin story and just have him training the whole time. And then do what happened in the comics, which in the comics, Strange shows up, he wants to get healed... Ancient One says no. Then he finds out that Mordo is actually planning to kill the Ancient One, puts a spell on Doctor Strange where he can't tell. So instead, Doctor Strange does the first selfless thing ever and says, make me your student in order to learn the magic to defend the Ancient One from Mordo. Because here's the other thing. That character beat, which is kind of essential, like if you were a hardcore Doctor Strange fan, it's like when they screwed up Batman's origin by making the Joker the person who kills his parents, or Spider-Man, where you find out it's Sandman who kills Uncle Ben. Like, there are very possibly Doctor Strange fans that are very angry with that, because in the end, he still does everything for selfish reasons. He just gets shown a world he doesn't know yet and says, teach me, but it's still so he can heal his hands.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't make that decision to help other people until the end, when he looks at his hands wavering and he looks out and he's like, all right, I guess I'm going to do this instead. And then, total side note, he's wearing the yellow gloves. I don't know if you guys noticed at the very end when he's talking to Thor in the post-credits, he's actually wearing gloves. I think those are supposed to be the yellow gloves he has in the comics. I don't need to see those. Okay. I think they did fine without the yellow gloves.
A, they did 2 stings, and
Yes.
I didn't need 2 stings. And B, none of the stings were very good.
Well, to be fair, you get the reveal in the mid-credits one saying that we're potentially going to get Doctor Strange in the next Thor movie, which is
Ragnarok.
potentially right. Which
I've heard he's going to make an appearance.
Right. So that in itself is a nice tease for Marvel fans.
Kind of, sort of, but, you know, like, okay, you're doing Ragnarok. Cool. You're going to have Doctor Strange in there helping out. Cool. But the way they did it, it was just like, I have this log I keep on important people, you know, and, well, your brother. Let's have a little conversation about your brother. It was such a dry, weird scene.
He just picked up the phone and called Thor. Like,
yeah. Like, oh,
yeah.
Hey, come on over to my place, you know. Oh, you'll have tea. Oh, I don't like tea. Oh, well, I've got this magic beer mug that never drains itself. You know, like...
Well, he's got the time gem.
Okay.
So he can refill.
You know,
that's right.
I just was like...
Does that mean the beer's leaving his stomach?
Yeah, he's like, oh, I don't feel full anymore. Better drink again.
Man, I'm not drunk anymore.
Yeah.
You know, my alcohol's back.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, because it seemed to imply that when he repaired the book and the pages came back into the book...
And nobody thought about doing that before.
I got the feeling that the pages still existed for C money. I got the feeling that he still had the pages, so it replaced them because you're not supposed to mess with it, and maybe after a certain period of time they would just disappear again, maybe.
Well, it showed him having the pages.
But yes, and then after that we saw Doctor Strange with the book, and he replaces the pages in the book. The question is, when he did that take the pages away from the other guy who had them previously?
See, to me it was more like it was shining the light from the past onto it, so it was just that
they were temporary.
Through the lens of this thing, he could
yeah.
see what was in the past rather than like it actually physically. You know, so again, it's magic, but not very well flushed out. Like, you don't really understand its application, because if it's both that he can use it to rewind time or to make a time loop, then it would physically make these pages exist. But the way
they warn him not to use the amulet that much, because it is splintering time and could have disastrous effects. Mordo kind of warns him about that. So, which, by the way, I
alternate 1985 where Biff owns a casino.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear to your listeners. Concilius was the Mads Mikkelsen villain in this movie. Mordo was his friend until the end.
Right.
When it's revealed that
that's correct.
He may have insidious...
Right. Mordo, I think they were just holding off, very much like Sinestro and Green Lantern, is right until the very end we're finding out he's going to be a bad guy. And it sounds like he's basically going to be what in this most recent Doctor Strange run in the comics, written by Jason Aaron, is the Empirical, which is this alien race that hates all magic. So they are going through the universe, the multiverse even, killing magic. Because that is not Mordo's role. He's just an evil sorcerer.
I love the fact that they're making him kind of a partner good guy until the end. I just love that, like, blatant, like, Mordo is a bad guy. Really?
Yeah.
The guy whose name is almost
Murder
is a bad guy? I know that because I read the comics.
Well, just think if they gave him the facial hair Mordo has in the comics, which is like the very villainy pointy beard and the so I would think that for people that have been listening to this point, probably think we don't like this movie.
Yeah.
So we should correct that. What are the things you guys liked the most about the movie?
Benjamin Bratt.
Clarify.
The last comic book movie he was in was Catwoman. And now we see him, even though it's just a very brief appearance, like he's in it. And I was like, oh, hey, there's Benjamin Bratt. Good for you. I think this makes up a little bit for your Catwoman appearance.
And now what character does he play in this movie?
He plays Gentleman Number B. I don't know what his name is. He's a paralyzed guy that, they find out, or Doctor Strange finds out that this guy had previously come back from a wound that was unhealable, and that he was able to pick up his life and, walk again. And
which is its own story thing that I actually have an issue with, because they just find him playing basketball somewhere. It was a huge issue. Yeah. A huge break of the Hippocratic Oath for him to get the files on this guy.
And the guy's like, oh, I remember you. You wouldn't even see me. I didn't get past your secretary.
Then
and
how
he's
do you
like,
know?
Oh, but I've got broken hands. And he's like,
then
okay,
how does he recognize
I'll give you
him?
the secret
If he couldn't get past
information.
his secretary, how does he even know who he is?
Yeah.
But
By
also,
name.
Well,
I
the
guess,
implication is that Doctor Strange is kind of famous, like one of those scientists you'd
okay.
see.
Like, you
that's
weren't willing to
in
help
time.
me,
Yeah.
so now I'm not going to help you. No, it's just like, oh, sure.
But
You've got
where he's
broken
like,
hands,
I
so
had
here.
wise men carrying me up hills to talk to sit, and you're like, and then we find out he's just like a machinist with a poorly lit shop somewhere in New York, and it's kind of like,
didn't do any of
how
that.
did you afford to?
He just went to Kathmandu and was like,
hill?
hey, I'm looking for this. I'm looking for that.
That is another thing I kind of have an issue with on this one. Is
I would
it's
like to just
it's a mistake. Like the guy Mordo just happens to overhear Doctor Strange saying the name of the place, and that's how he finds it. Yeah. So we can't really call that fate. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And of course, he's standing there like hood over his face,
yeah,
like people do in the middle of the day,
Yeah.
all the time
in the heat.
I just want to point out real quick that the point of that character who was paralyzed and then regained control of his legs, but just went back to his old life, is to show that's the path some people can take.
Yes.
So Doctor Strange's hands are healed. He could just, quit the whole sorcery thing
and just use
go
magic
back
for his
home.
hand. Yeah.
But he wants to help other people by the end, and that's the path he's on, and why eventually he'll become the Sorcerer Supreme.
But now we have so many uses of giving him that story. We have Rachel McAdams telling you to be a nicer person and care about people other than yourself. We have, I'm just going to call him the Machinist, because I don't remember the character's name, who was able to use the magic and just uses it sort of subconsciously to heal himself. We have
the Ancient One.
The Ancient One talking about how I use dark magic for my own means to prolong my life.
And you've even got C-Money being like, hey.
But it's that idea of how many different examples of the different paths that Strange could take and didn't. I guess I like that it's more complex than just the one person who's your opposite number. But yeah, I don't know. Again, I'm happy it was in there. I feel like maybe some of those things could have been given less time in order for us to spend more time on the other things to make it feel less like such a piecemeal movie. Like, you could watch each scene of this movie on YouTube and love this movie. I just feel like when it's all put together, I felt like it was good. It just didn't feel like the whole thing was there. It felt like it was originally a lot longer and got cut down for time, and maybe it suffers. But again, good things. I want to talk good things. At least one good thing before we move into characters.
Like, the number one good thing about this movie is the visuals. It looks really cool. It's got a lot of Inception-y kind of mind-bending, reality-altering sort of thing. So it's very cool to look at. Like, that was my main desire to see the movie in the theater to begin with. And
Would you have gone to see that in 3D? I can't do
No,
3D movies, but
see,
it felt like if anything was 3D.
if I was a fan
yeah.
of 3D, I would say yes.
Yeah.
I am not generally a fan of 3D, or I'm indifferent towards it. So I wouldn't make the special effort to go to this in 3D. I enjoyed watching it as it was. The Mad Max, that was a movie that I did enjoy in 3D when I saw that in the theater. So, but this, it would probably be a cool experience seeing it in 3D, but you don't have to be able to enjoy it from a visual perspective.
I agree. One side note I will throw out there is that a lot of what was kind of revolutionary about the Doctor Strange comic wasn't, the character and the way he was written so much as the artwork, the Steranko artwork. That was kind of the thing that had a lot of people who grew up with that character reading that book, was the fact that the art was so out there and cool to look at. Even if what you were reading wasn't that intriguing to you, still the visuals were all there.
And they're bringing back the resurgence of like the occult in comic books after like the Comic Book Authority cracked down and gave it the comic code.
Which we talked about 2 weeks ago. I did a whole episode on horror comics for Halloween.
That took out that whole subgenre of comics. So this was able to like fold a little bit of that back into it and do it in a way that was, acceptable to the code.
And I will say that's what I was looking forward to in this movie, and it did not disappoint. I wanted to go see a movie that was visually spectacular, and it certainly is that. It does not skimp on the visuals at all. That's why they keep it to just a few locations, and then some really impressive, I mean, we know it's green screen stuff, but some really impressive visual effects. It gets really, really trippy. I love the scene with the hands and then the fingers, and then it forms into his face, and then you go through his eye. That whole scene.
And it's him clutching to the inside of his eyeballs.
Which sounds ridiculous when you're describing it. But
it
is actually
and
really
it came
cool.
so fast and hard, too. It didn't, take its time to trip you out. It's like bang, 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 all these crazy visuals, which, to confuse you and put you in sort of his shoes while you're seeing all of these visuals happen. I loved that. I think that was great. I also did like the fight scene where they're folding the world in on itself and that whole thing in the mirror dimension, which I thought was very cool. And I liked the way they did that.
It was very Inception.
They lengthened the hallway so he couldn't run away from them.
Right. And I liked a lot of that. I will say, though, that the mirror dimension fight, which is what you see in the trailer where New York is folding in on itself, I don't know why there was so much running. That whole scene was this cool bending the world around them kind of thing, but it was a foot chase. Yeah. Which I thought was
And there was
odd.
a lot of falling, too.
A lot of falling,
it was like the bad guys were able to control it.
But the one dude can run on air, and he has the cloak of levitation. I don't know why they just didn't stop themselves. They kept falling. Yeah. But here's the other part of it.
Or open a doorway right where they were falling.
Right. Yeah. But here's the benefit of this being so fresh, because I'm thinking as I'm speaking. And the reason that we don't just get a Neo versus Mr. Smith fight, folding the world around itself craziness, is Strange can't do it yet. He is fighting a guy who is way out of his own league. Way, way more powerful, which is why I think it kind of cheapens the Dormammu scene, because clearly somebody who's extremely more powerful.
Oh, yeah.
I love the time
ancient
thing.
Being.
Yeah. Right, and I love the time thing. I just don't know why it wasn't Concilius versus Doctor Strange in the Dark Dimension. I'm going to make a portal to the Dark Dimension, shove you through it, and then I'm going to introduce time and put you into a time loop. That's how he's able to defeat the bad guy. You can have a humorous moment in there if you want. He doesn't have to kill him, because we only get one small scene of by the way, I made an oath never to kill somebody, and I just did. I like that we got that moment, because as soon as that happened, I said, he just killed that guy. Shouldn't he be a little more concerned with that? And then they had the scene, and so I was happy it was there. And then after that, he's like, oh, but you're going to turn to... And here's the cool thing. I don't know if you guys noticed what they turned into as they were flying into the Dark Dimension at the end. Completely black with the glowing red eyes. Those are mindless ones, my friends.
Nice catch.
The minions of Dormammu in the Dark Dimension that often get sent to our realm.
Because I saw them, and I was like, they're physically intact still. It's not like they're getting shredded into...
No, it looked like they got turned into mindless ones.
They got withered, cool. And just kind of sucked away,
So we'll potentially see them again. But I don't know. I think the visuals were good, and like I said, the individual scenes were really cool. There's a lot of really great stuff in there. I think if you split it up, it was fine. I'm not going to say the editing was bad or the direction was bad. I think everything seemed to fit together well. If anything, I think
costuming was really good.
Costuming was amazing. I love the costumes in this movie. The first time I saw Doctor Strange's costume, I was like, oh, they're really going for something different. Good. I didn't really necessarily like that the amulet was around the neck and not the clasp for the cape. But then clearly it was going to be the Infinity Stone.
I liked that as soon as he put it on, he's like, I don't need to take this off. Until like the ending scene where he very specifically sets it back in the cradle.
Well, there's the one where it's laying on the table next to him when he's injured. He's not even wearing it, but he's wearing it in his astral self. I thought that was funny. But no, I think the costume design is like, I dig that. Like, I want a Doctor Strange costume now. I want to cosplay that because that just, especially when you get the closer shots and you see just the actual work that goes in, it's something we never really get to see. And small Easter egg, in his original blue tunic that he's wearing, before he has that really nice one that he wears for the majority of the film, there is just a light patterning of lighter blue, almost white, that goes up the center and branches out. I think that is actually the Doctor Strange emblem that he has on his shirt in the comic book. You have to look for it, but that was there.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
So keep an eye out for that if anybody hasn't seen it and is not minding the spoilers or is going to go see it again, or I guess pictures online or when it comes out on DVD. Was there anything else you guys really, really dug before we dig into the individual characters?
Well, speaking of the individual characters,
let's just do it. Yeah, let's just roll in.
Yeah, I liked Mordo. I liked Concilius. I liked Strange himself. I didn't care so much for the love interest. She wasn't really fleshed out at all.
Rachel McAdams, isn't she in another superhero movie? Wasn't she in one of the Superman movies?
I think like she was Lois Lane.
I feel like she was Lois Lane in
Edit
something.
this out if I'm wrong.
Oh, maybe Superman... not Superman
No, that
Returns?
was Kate... something.
I can look it up right now.
Yeah, that's fine. But...
Okay. Yes as in yes, do it?
Oh, yeah,
or yes, that's fine. Okay, well, talk amongst yourselves then. I'll look it up while you guys... So what did you guys think of... Let's just start right up at the top. What did you guys think of Benedict Cumberbatch? Did you think he was... Is he Doctor Strange to you now in your head the way that Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. are the same person?
See, it didn't... It wasn't as tight of a fit for me. You know, it's not like you said where Tony Stark is Robert Downey Jr. Like, it's not that kind of level, but... I like it. I think, again, he would have been better in just his normal British voice. I think that would have worked better for him. But yeah, I mean, like, Cumberbatch is obviously a big name. He comes with a built-in audience these days,
Yeah.
So you're doing your movie right by casting him in the first place. Just you'll get some people in the door just because they like Sherlock or whatever,
I was going to say, she's in the Sherlock Holmes movie with Robert Downey Jr. I think that's the only one you're thinking of. I don't have her for any of the Superman movies.
Okay.
In the abridged version of her filmography there.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but then Mordo. I was a fan of Mordo. I like how he was there. He seemed like a pretty fleshed out character. And to add to the costume design, I love how they're all scarred up. I like how the Ancient One has scars all over her head.
Mm-hmm.
I like how Mordo just has scars. Like, they've seen some stuff. They've been in some fights, and I really dig that. No, I thought Mordo was really well done. I didn't like the flip at the end of the movie. It made no sense at all.
Exactly.
No sense. For him to be like, I believe in this. I had this terrible life. I did things you couldn't believe. I would, at a moment's notice, kill somebody to protect this. That should be the character he turns into.
Yeah.
He's still using magic. He's just now being super proactive in killing people that he thinks might be threats. And then that involves the time gem because, maybe we can look into the future. I don't know what.
Yeah,
but
or that he very specifically goes after anyone who's a follower of that dark god.
Yeah.
Like, not just like, oh, hey, Benjamin Bratt, you seem like you're having, a pretty, good life, having, fixed yourself from living in a wheelchair for the rest of your life.
But it's...
Give me that, and he just takes his magic power and leaves him a cripple.
Because if it was that he was taking their power to become more powerful himself, that would make more sense. But this is just there need to be fewer sorcerers in the world. The danger is that magic exists at all, which I guess on some level makes sense. But
like he left the guy alive,
yeah,
but he didn't like do something where it's like he broke his connection to the spirit world.
He
or
just
something.
took the magic that he had taken into himself
so
to cure his
theoretically, the guy still has that knowledge. Wouldn't
That's
he
true.
just be able to fix
Do it
himself again?
Yeah.
Like, you didn't kill him, but it's Benjamin Bratt, so it's a big enough... So are we going to see him again in a future movie?
I wouldn't think so unless he's a character that I'm not thinking of. I'd have
Or
to look
he's
it up
going
to
to
see
be
if that's
like
an Easter
brought
egg.
into Avengers 3 as somebody who has some experience in this, and like he gets wheeled in a chair.
Yeah,
you know,
he could be the Professor X of his.
He becomes
Doctor
MODOK.
Strange.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. You just blew the lid off. He becomes MODOK.
He becomes MODOK. They just cut his head off and blow it up real big. And
Secretly,
He doesn't
this
need
movie,
arms and legs.
No.
This movie was two things. It was a MODOK setup, and it
A
was
backdoor MODOK
and
setup.
it was a don't talk and drive
yeah,
PSA.
Oh yeah.
that's true.
Feature length.
Distracted driving. You're driving like an
Yeah.
a-hole. Like
They should have shown him texting. Really drive it home to that. It's a PG-13 movie.
And
really drive it home to that teenage
speaking
audience.
to the companies who are, I'm sure, endorsing this movie by giving them money, and whoever the car manufacturer and the technology manufacturer is, that was not a good commercial for them, because it was the easiest little swipe of his finger, and he was talking to the person, and then boom, crash.
Man,
Like,
Samsung has gotten enough bad press in the last
Yeah.
month or so, but
oh man, hands free, but yeah, it doesn't matter. You're still distracted.
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of what they're doing with Mordo, because I get him not killing. If the idea is he's sort of retaining his humanity, just doing what he thinks he needs to do is take the magic away, so there are fewer people with magic, I guess. I don't know.
Then they should have explained it a little
It didn't
bit
feel
better.
strong enough for a sequel.
Yeah.
I think Dormammu being the villain would have made it stronger for a sequel of him leaking back in. Let's talk Dormammu. Did that do anything for you guys? Pure CG, giant, angry dude?
It didn't do anything for me in any of the other...
As far as character.
Like, in the Fantastic Four movie, the Silver Surfer one, that was awful. That was just a big cloud of CGI.
Galactus, yeah.
Was not threatening at all. Same thing with even some of these other MCU movies with like the Avengers and stuff. It's just a big blob of CGI. It doesn't come off as being scary to me.
Sure. And I don't know if it was meant to be scary. I think it was just meant to be overwhelming. Awesome in the proper meaning of the term, because it's just so... Because every time he even does anything, he just gets instantly killed.
Yeah.
So they just wanted to present
in like the same 3 ways over and over.
Yeah, but I'll bet you it's going to be a great level on the video game for the boss level, which is another part of a lot of these movies when they it's almost like they're written by guys who make video games.
Yeah.
New level, this time we're running around and the walls are things.
Or like the
new bad
Parallax
guy, other bad
in
guy.
the Green Lantern. Again, it was just a blob of CGI, and it was with a voice and I'm powerful.
Yeah.
So it was just I guess I'm a little bit more intimidated by something that's our size.
Sure.
That is meant to be immensely powerful.
And
beyond,
then serves more plot. Because the idea of
Plus you
Concilius
could put
is,
an actor in
I'm
that
you
role.
if you lose your faith. They never say it, but the idea of it's another sorcerer who has been at it much longer than you, so is much more powerful than you. And while that's stereotypical of showing the other side of the coin as your bad guy, I agree that because that means more plot-wise to be fighting somebody that's like that, a Moriarty.
Yeah.
well, Darth Vader, evil Jedi.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So again, that's by the numbers, and I do feel that much of this movie is by the numbers, so I am happy with the things that are slightly different, in that sense.
And the concept at the end with the time loop, like you brought that into his dark dimension, and now its laws are applying to him in, like, it's this ancient entity.
But that's why that question would be
me,
answered when Wong says it's an infinity
if
stone.
you're a timeless being, time doesn't apply to you.
Unless it's an infinity stone, which is its own whole thing. If I can throw this in there as a comic book deep cut,
go for it.
Infinity gems only work in the universe in which they were created. That's a huge deal in like the Secret War crossover with all the Illuminati stuff, is they put together an Infinity Gauntlet to stop other universes from entering ours, but the problem is it doesn't work in their universe, so you can't go to their universe with your Infinity Stones and set things right. So technically, according to the Marvel 616 comic book universe, that Eye of Agamotto should not have worked.
Well, and they never
Dark
say
Dimension.
you're in a different universe. You're in a different dimension.
Okay.
So
That's interesting. All right.
It's kind of like going to Asgard.
I kind of assumed those are two different things, but
Like the Iron Man suit would still work in Asgard if Tony Stark traveled there. The
sure,
spider,
because it's considered
the web shooters would still work.
Okay.
And
All right.
So it's just a different dimension.
That's tech, not magic, but I'll give it to you. That's fine. I suppose electricity having different rules
It's a very
or something.
practical argument.
Yeah.
For...
But they kind
Also,
of
the
throw
dark
around
dimension
that
is-
terminology a lot, though. Like,
Yeah.
they'll refer to something as another universe because our entire plane of existence is on our universe, and to get to a different universe, you'd have to go into a different dimension wherein there it would exist a whole another. So to me, it seems like it's just like a shortcut way of saying that he would be in another universe
Sure.
that is in another dimension.
And that's my thought, yeah. And there is also the issue of the dark dimension being a very boring place outside of Dormammu being there.
Yeah.
Like nothing else is going on. It's just a whole bunch of floaty things.
Yeah.
But again, we keep saying bad things. Seriously, it's not that bad of a movie. We really kind of covered...
I've got more bad things to say, though. Like, I do. I'm sorry. I liked the movie, but there are things that I, like...
There's a lot of nitpicking
well,
that you can
to
do
get back
in this
on,
movie.
something good, to go back to the visuals.
Yeah.
Just to specify or go a little bit deeper into what I liked about the visuals, loved about the visuals. It was actually very interesting in this movie. I also really liked X-Men Age of Apocalypse that came out earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
But the most boring part of that movie to me was the beginning, set in Egypt, because it all turns into this big
fest.
CGI,
Yeah.
Basically feast, if you want to look at it that way. But I thought it was more like vomit, because it was just like, I don't care anymore.
Whereas in this movie,
it's very MC Escher, very cool to look at. Even
the
if
CGI works really well in this one.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for story purposes. Well, I don't think there's really any other characters, because that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's a kind of a handful
for
of
the cat,
characters,
which
and
is
then some
perfect.
people kind of on the outside.
Like I said, blue guy, green guy, yellow guy, white lady, night nurse. That's it. That's your cast. 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm okay with that, because this is a movie that should not have been bigger than that. It's very insular. It's all about Stephen Strange,
Yeah.
Which is kind of ironic, since it goes like London, Hong Kong,
Right?
to Nepal.
Yes,
to
because clearly
New
there's
York.
other masters, because we find the guy who was in charge of the Sanctum Sanctorum. Also, there's that. We never really got into that. The idea of multiple sanctums around the world. I am not a big enough Doctor Strange fan to know that that's the case. It's always just, he's located in New York and built his Sanctum Sanctorum there. There is no other meaning of it. There are only 3 places, and when those go down, the dark dimension enters our world.
I did like how, and this is ironic, like,
Seems very
it's
bad.
Hong Kong, New York, London.
They're all
screw the South
Yep,
Pole.
yep.
No,
It's all north of the
anybody
equator.
south of that equator,
Yeah.
just screw them.
I thought that was interesting, as well as the fact that there's like one sorcerer in each place protecting them, and there's 3 locations. The 3 locations go down, and our Earth
they only
is
took 2
doomed.
of those down. They only took down.
No, London gets taken first, and that's the first time we kind of get introduced to them doing anything. Then there's New York. Well, I guess that's true. New York technically doesn't get destroyed, and then
That would have been in poor taste. Come
Yeah.
on, Rob.
They take out London, and
Yeah.
then they're in the process of taking down Hong Kong.
and that's
And then he
opening the
reverses.
portal. Maybe
Yeah.
there was the thought that maybe New York
It's
was
enough
destroyed.
of a weakened bond that
Yeah.
he can start to come
Well,
through.
here's
Maybe.
a theory, but also probably why they did that.
Sure.
To help this movie make some money in the international market.
Yeah,
So it's New York,
absolutely.
and then Hong Kong,
Yes.
and London too.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
China is very important now for movies take.
Yeah, so
in
the
Tokyo,
third
I
act
suppose,
takes
yeah.
place there.
Yeah.
And that makes that makes a lot of sense.
And in
but
the background-
is that a big enough reason for them to introduce multiple sanctums?
In the background, I'm pretty sure you can see Batman extracting that guy from the tall office building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Using the flight hook,
Yeah.
whatever. All right, so let's close it out. I'm sure we could go on for hours and hours, but we're not going to.
I just have
Just
one
for
more
time.
thing I need to say.
Well, like I said, final thoughts and where you think it ends up. Because wrapping it all up, because we didn't say a thing about this movie until we started talking. So now that we've conversed, we've heard each other's opinions and things I didn't think of that you guys said, and whatever, I have nothing. But, like,
I feel like I've been
Pull it together.
bludgeoned in the face with a MacGuffin, and then they didn't do anything with it.
and what was the MacGuffin in this one?
Like, the mirror dimension.
Okay.
Like, they talk, Tilda Swinton is very specific with him. Don't get rid of your sliders ring or whatever, your decoder ring. Because without that, you'll get stuck in this dimension and you'll be unable to exit it. And then they don't do it.
Yeah, well, because the other guy gets his ring, because he says, you don't have your swirly ring, but that was...
And then they fight and they're running around and then it all works out in the end.
Yeah,
it's like
the ancient one crashes through it, and then Doctor Strange and Mordo just sort of run up. I guess Mordo has his.
I guess
is how we're supposed to play that.
But
they just kind of run up from nowhere.
Bring up one of your 5 characters in this movie, the one who knows the most about everything, tells you that this is a thing that can happen if you're not careful.
So that's a red herring less than a MacGuffin, though. Yeah. The MacGuffin is the
item in the movie that
the thing you're going after, but it's not the real plot. The real plot is growing as a person or whatever.
So, but then they don't do it, and I'm the whole time I was like, so Mads Mikkelsen is going to get banished to this mirror universe where he's going to be able to interact with everything, but he's going to be trapped, and it's not going to be reality, and he's just going to be like, rah, forever.
Which would also be a very cool ending.
And you could then later have someone break into that mirror universe to get him out. Again,
missed opportunity. Maybe
they didn't do it.
Yeah.
So the whole time I'm just like, oh, so I guess that's not really that important, huh?
So that said, what are your sort of final thought or final grade, or where would you give it a letter grade, and then where would you put it amongst the other Marvel movies?
Being a C average student many, many times in my life, I'm going to grade it a C. I know a C when I see a C.
Okay.
I liked it, but it wasn't great. It certainly wasn't enough that I need to see a list of more of these Doctor Strange movies. I'm sure it'll get a sequel because it's already doing well. It's critically doing well. It's a pretty good movie. Not great, but pretty good. So I think there will be more of that we'll see with this character, but I don't need it. I'm not like, oh man,
are you pumped to see
him? Did you see the Phoenix
Infinity
in the
War?
water? I can't wait for X-Men 3.
Okay, but now are you looking forward to seeing how Doctor Strange interacts with the other Marvel characters in Infinity War?
Yeah, vaguely.
Okay.
I'm a little bit more interested to see how Spider-Man is going to, and I'm not even a Spider-Man fan. I'm just interested to see how they're going to do this with this new character that they have to use now.
So where does this move?
Doctor Strange, I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. He'll be there to be able to go woo, and then
teleport people around.
Yeah. So
where does he sit in your rankings of Marvel movies without getting super specific? Because obviously that's a big list.
Okay, let's say there's 20 spots on the list. I'd say this is within my definitely top 10, probably not top 5.
Okay. So for everything. Missed opportunities, but still for you a solid film. Now, is that solely because of it? Is it because of the visuals?
Largely so. And I like Mads Mikkelsen a lot. Okay. I like Chiwetel Ejiofor a lot. I even like Benedict Cumberbatch and Rachel McAdams and Tilda Swinton. These are actors that I like. So you kind of already have me in the theater because you're putting them in your movie. Because truthfully, Chiwetel Ejiofor is one of my favorite working actors, and I would watch anything that he did, given the opportunity to see it. Because I think he just elevates everything that he is in. So, and then to have him kind of slide into this bad guy character, I'm like, okay, I'm sure we'll get to see more of him, so that's a good thing. But it's not a character of his that I particularly like, so that's not a particularly good thing. So, yeah, it's probably just outside of my top 5 Marvel movies. Okay.
That's still pretty high praise.
Yeah.
So it's a good seat. So you must really not like...
To me, in my own mind...
Marvel movies.
Marvel movies are all the Marvel movies, not the MCU.
Okay.
So I'm talking about Daredevil, X-Men. Elektra, the X-Men movies, the Wolverine standalone movies. All of that is, in my mind, the Marvel movies.
Because it's Marvel superheroes.
Yes.
Okay.
So for me...
You just must really not like comic book movies. If a C movie is number 6 through 10 somewhere for you.
Well, there have been a lot of really terrible Marvel ones, or ones that are equally C grade, but less impressive visually.
Sure.
For me, the Avengers movies, I didn't really care for them.
Okay.
Whatever. And they didn't do much for me visually. Ant-Man is like my favorite MCU movie.
Oh, okay.
Again, not because like it's this big grandiose story arc and he saves the universe. It was a fun movie, and it made me laugh when they did the Thomas the Train scene and stuff like that. And then it just was like the perspective where it draw back to our size and it's pop, instead of like boom,
Right.
So I thought that was fun. The original Iron Man, the original Captain America. And of course the X-Men, Days of Future Past, and like X2.
Sure.
Those all kind of round out my top 5 Marvel movies.
Oh,
So
this is I
would be outside of that range.
see. I might put it. That's tough. I might put it maybe around the same area, maybe a little lower. I would definitely equate it with like a Days of Future Past, where there's some really good stuff in there, but it just doesn't quite pull it off. Or like an Iron Man 2. There's some really great stuff in Iron Man 2. It just doesn't, in the end, feel like a great cohesive standalone film. Like, I think Winter Soldier, really up there, the first Iron Man, really up there, because they're like, we're going to make a movie that's good on its own, exists in this world, yada, yada, yada. I feel like the first Avengers is a very cohesive, even if they're cramming so much stuff in there, I feel like they do a very good job. This is more like an Age of Ultron, where you have all this other stuff you're doing. However, it being standalone, I would totally put it above Ant-Man as far as the standalone films. I don't know if I would put it above the first Captain America, but maybe, because really, I can't wait until I see it again. I don't know if I'm going to see it in the theater again, though. For whatever reason, we got tickets to go and see another movie at that theater. I don't
know why either.
Well, we were with another friend of ours there, and she was saying she heard something about something being wrong with the screen, or maybe the audio, one of the speakers didn't work. For whatever reason, they handed everybody a ticket to come back and see another movie.
Yeah.
But I didn't notice anything wrong with the film. But I look forward to seeing it again to dive into it a little deeper. For me, it's always an issue when the story suffers, because I can sit and do a popcorn movie. Some guy named Matt, my buddy Matt, and that is how we know him, because for whatever reason he doesn't want people to know his full name. But some guy named Matt, he would love this movie because it's just all visuals and it's just huge. But yeah, so I liked it. I loved the costumes. I loved the design, the special effects, and sort of the journey through the different dimensions is amazing. I liked the Inception folding in on itself stuff, even though a lot of that did feel kind of familiar. But I have no idea why it was a chase scene, because it could have been a very cool chase scene, and it wasn't. It's just, we're just kind of running around, and I wasn't sure why they were running around and running away or to or from, where it could have been a very cool chase scene, like through an MC Escher painting. And I feel like that's what they were going for. But certainly, I could have done with more of that, even in some of the fight scenes. I thought the time stuff was very cool, but it seemed very simple. We filmed it and then we reversed it, so I felt like maybe they blew their special effects a little too early. They caught you with the journey through the different dimensions, and then when we see Concilius doing the different warping of reality, but we don't really get any of that at the end. Like the CG Fest is Dormammu. Mm-hmm. So maybe space it out a little.
There were void of light face with eyes in it, with kind of a ripple.
Too many things that we would have changed, I think, is the problem.
Yeah.
It's coming out with far too many things, be like, oh, that was good, but it would have been great if.
Yeah.
And there were too many of those for it to be perfect. But beyond that, I thought it was good. And those little tweaks are really just nitpicking. So I wanted to chime in because as the newest person joining us on the podcast, I wanted to give you last say there, Dr. Ray. So final thoughts on the film
with Dr. Ray.
New segment. That's
trademark.
There you go.
Well, it's probably a bad idea you did that. I liked it a little bit more than both of you.
And that's perfect.
B+ for me.
Okay.
Still not my favorite Marvel movie. Not as good as Captain America. Not as good as Winter Soldier. Not as good as Civil War even. So the whole trilogy of Captain America beats out this movie. Unfortunately, I still really liked it. Great performances all around. Visually, it was a treat. We didn't see it in 3D, but it would have been cool to see in 3D, and I'm not a big 3D fan either.
Yeah. And it seems like none of us are really 3D guys, but we're all kind of saying maybe. And I did get a message from another friend who went and saw it and said, you might even want to consider doing it in 3D. And it was just like, but I don't do 3D movies. Yeah.
But I liked the stuff they did throughout. It was not overwhelming. It was just cool, like fractally stuff. They did it in Ant-Man. Towards the end, when he turns off his regulator and keeps shrinking down, smaller and smaller, then even atoms, and then eventually you see corks, and then he goes even smaller, and you see an artistic representation of strings from string theory. It was kind of like that. Again, it was very like MC Escher, trippy, fractally kaleidoscope kind of visuals, but it was neat. Not overwhelming or underwhelming.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. And again, like pretty much all the characters are portrayed by likable actors and actresses.
Yes.
So
they
even if they're not fleshed out entirely to our liking,
right?
You could have killed this movie by adding a Jai Courtney. I mean, it would have been awful.
Yeah, and I do, and a thing I was thinking while you were talking about the different special effects is when I did my preview episode, it's Doctor Strange, it's magic. They just kind of do whatever. They're almost very specific. Like a lot of complaints about movies that do magic and stuff is the rules aren't very well defined. This one really is like, you do these hand movements, you can make a shield or a weapon. And the weapon can be some sort of blade, or in his version, and what Doctor Strange can do, it's basically just like a whip. And that's it. That's all he can come up with. The other guy can make swords and things.
I was a little curious as to what it was that they were doing in those first scenes where it was showing like Tilda Swinton put up the box, and then
I thought that was basically a shield thing.
Pushed it, and then it just kind of like faded.
I think the idea is she was just showing the shape she can make. I would think that was meant to be like a shield. See, I said we can make weapons or shields, and here's this physical thing she made out of nothing, and then it just disperses like everything else does that they do magically.
Yeah, I guess I was wondering if it would be something where it was like, a charm protection or something like that. Like, because they were in one of their sanctums, and but
everything is and that was the other thing. You don't get any of that.
That sanctum, you'd need to like have these charms that kept like your enemies from being able to find it and that sort of thing, like they do in the Harry Potter movies.
Right, but this movie has none of that. There is nothing that doesn't seem to have direct physical consequences. There isn't a good luck charm in Doctor Strange. He doesn't
fix his watch. I was expecting at the end of the movie when he strapped his watch
that he was going to do the time thing.
That he was just going to be like,
because it's a representation of time.
And they didn't do it. No. And I don't know if it's just that he cherishes the watch in its current condition.
Maybe,
or
I don't know.
Something.
But just that idea that like the different magic, there is no just magic for magic's sake. They're like, we can travel somewhere else with these rings, or we can do this specific thing, and you're specifically being trained to do martial arts, which we got none of, but everybody can do. And then with that is the ability to make these weapons. Okay, but anyway, we're diving back in, and I wanted to be slowly working our way out for time's sake.
Deeper.
So a solid C, a B plus. I would probably say maybe a low B, maybe a B minus, because I thought it maybe a solid B for me, but not towards a B plus. I wouldn't go that far. Yeah, sorry, you were saying, Ray?
Oh, I was going to say what a great ending that would have been if he would have taken the Infinity Gem out of the necklace
and put it in his watch.
And that would have made the watch thing make more sense for me.
Mm-hmm.
But then we lose the Eye of Agamotto.
Yeah, I know.
And that's sort of the cape and the amulet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's his jam.
I was also going to throw in, I am like Liam, I really enjoyed Ant-Man. And it was refreshing in that movie to see an ex-con be the hero of the movie. Okay. It was a lighter tone. It wasn't a serious, reflection on what being an ex-con is like. But there was an element of that. And in this movie, I appreciated, because I have spent some of my life in a hospital recovering. I like the fact that people who are going through intense physical traumas and getting better, recovering, were given some shine.
Yeah, and I wondered I was kind of wondering if any of that hit home. I didn't know how personal, whatever we wanted to get, but like showing him just trying to write his name and sign his name. And I know that with your brain injury, that was one of the things you were doing.
Pins in his hands.
Yeah. If that was something that resonated, that drew you more to his character as being more relatable in that way.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe that's why I tend to have a more favorable opinion of this movie as a whole.
And you do grow a slick Van Dyke.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is true. I'm really jealous because I haven't seen you in a couple of.
Ladies and gentlemen, I
I
have
want
a
to say it was
beard.
only weeks, but that thing looks like it's been coming in for a long time. It's so thick and full and wonderful.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, you know I have a full
Liam's
beard.
got a big beard, yeah.
And I've had it trimmed down, but Ray really wears that well. It's the way that it's meant to be worn.
Well, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this live. I'm gonna take a photo of you guys with the microphone there. Yeah, I'm gonna do one more over here. There we go. Well, I'll throw that up on Twitter. Everybody can see the fine facial hair.
Oh yes.
That you gentlemen. I'm a little fuzzy. I'm doing a little bit of a Movember thing. I'm gonna work it into some sideburns or mutton chops. I think though. Wife says no mustache, whatever, because I'm too scruffy.
It's been 2 years
Too scruffy for
officially,
the
actually,
kissing,
since
so.
I grew this out now.
Yeah.
Because it was the beginning of November when I was about to go shave, and I was like, wait, I don't have to do that anymore. And so I let it go, and now it's been 2 years.
There it is.
Oh, hey, you had a chance there. Plug your Twitter account.
Oh yeah, well of course. Yeah. No, we always do this at the close, so I guess we will call that good with a bop a doop doop bop and boo.
Diddly dop bop a doop a doo.
Dabba dabba dap dip don't wow. So we're gonna say that is it for this week, you guys. Thank you both for joining me. I hope to do this again. Maybe I'll invest in a second microphone or some. I'd love to get a better setup. We'll see how this ends up sounding in post. We hung up some blankets from or curtains, whatever they are. The people who used to live in this house left them here, so now I use them to deaden sound when I'm recording in a room that's not the
And soon
the audio
they'll
booth.
deaden you.
Yes.
Because they're haunted.
Oh, thank you, Ray. But I hope you guys join us.
I'll come back. I've got plenty more negative things to say.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now, we've talked before, Liam. Liam is not on the Twitters or anything else. You are just on Facebook
Yeah, that's me.
as Liam O'Rourke. O with an apostrophe ROURKE.
K-E. That's me.
Liam O'Rourke. You see the guy with the big beard as you'll see him on Twitter.
There are a surprising number of Liam O'Rourke's out there on
There are.
Facebook.
There are. So make sure you get the right one.
Yeah.
Do you have an actual picture of yourself as your profile picture
Currently,
right now?
yes.
Okay. So that works out.
Yeah.
And Ray, where can people find you? If people want to follow you, do you blog? Do you tweet? Are you just on the face pages?
I'm just on the face pages.
Okay.
Like Liam, I haven't branched out to the other social medias.
Okay.
Twitter
But,
is the lowest form of communication.
Yeah, that's why it's so popular.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's gonna get a president elected.
Ugh.
We're recording this right before the election.
We
so
are,
it's like-
and I'm really happy we didn't get into that at all. We didn't even draw parallels. We didn't make jokes.
Dennis
It was
Kucinich,
beautiful.
2016. Anybody, please.
So
Yeah.
Ray Widstrand.
What if this recording travels back in time somehow? Shouldn't we warn them what the future does?
No, because we're not past the election yet,
All
so
right.
the world hasn't ended.
Anyway,
one way or the other. So if people want to find you, are you happy to let people come and find you on Facebook?
of course,
Then
I pretty much accept every friend request I receive.
so that's
so,
Widstrand, WIDSTRAND, Ray Widstrand, and you will see Ray. And there's a picture of you, I believe, currently as is it the Pokemon Doctor from Halloween, or just a doctor?
all
You're holding
my
a Squirtle,
siblings win as Pokemon or Pokemon trainers.
Okay.
And I have a evil doctor I tend to go as because I hate putting on a costume. So I tend to just dress that way. But nominally, I was Professor Oak. I didn't go with the gray hair, but
Sure.
everything else was there.
So if you look at Twitter and you see a picture, you can match that up. Myself, you can find me on Twitter, the lowest form of, what was it? Social communication. You can find me on Twitter at Rob's Comic Box, or if you want to follow me and see things that I write that do not have to do with comic books, you can follow me at Noby. That is at KNOWBY. You can email me at thecomicboxpodcast@gmail.com.
# comic box.
Yes, hashtag.
#.
Comic Box. That's fine. We are part of the Geek to Geek podcast network, so for updates on all of our shows, you can head to geektogeekcast.net. If you want to continue this conversation, are either of you guys Redditors?
Yes.
We have a subreddit at reddit.com/r/geektogeekcast, where you can continue this conversation with Liam himself,
Irish_mutt.
Irish_mutt. And we can talk more about Doctor Strange there. We're also on YouTube if you search, I think it's Geek to Geek or Geek to Geekcast on YouTube, but it's just another place to find our podcast. As always, we ask you to please rate and review, especially on iTunes. Every rating and every review we get moves us up in the markings a little bit so that more people can find us and we can keep growing this wonderful little Geek to Geek podcast network community. That's a very long name for it. Mm-hmm. Us geeks.
We don't need y'all's negativity, though. Only do it if it's something good.
Yeah, so until next week, this is Rob.
Liam.
Dr. Raymond Q. Widstrand.
And we are closing the comic box. Thanks, everybody. And then sometimes I throw something stupid at the end.
I was going to say, where all the acolytes of Concilius come in, they were sent there by the Sorting Hat.
Slytherins.
Yeah, exactly.
Every last one of them.
But see, but they weren't. They were orange. And that's not even a house. Doctor Strange, though, wearing blue, clearly a Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
Mordo goes evil in the end. He's green. Slytherin.
Yeah.
Right? You have the Ancient One who wears yellow, Hufflepuff, sort of in the middle. No one was wearing red. There were no Gryffindors in this movie.
Well, Doctor Strange once he got the cape, but
yeah.
I mean, it's pretty late into it.
He's blue. He's Ravenclaw. He's the studious one.
That's true.
Yeah.